Hello, y'all. Let's see. I think this is part 3 of medical apartheid, and I'll be reading from pages 38 to 37. So hopefully you guys are having a good day. Hopefully you guys will enjoy the video. Let's start from here. And hopefully you guys will be able to enjoy the video and learn some stuff. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. Hit the notification bell, do everything, and definitely support the channel. And I'm reading from pages 37 to 47. Yeah. So this part goes into more detail about certain things. It gets more. There's more information you can get as long as you continue to read the book and draw more of an understanding. So basically, this part goes off into different things that happen between blacks and whites and explains the relationship between the slave and slave master and things like that. So I'm going to start on page 37 where it says, it says here, the Tuskegee study of syphilis in the untreated N-word male between 1932 and 1972, 600 black men, their wives and children, were deceived into participating into the research study that denied them treatment so that PHS scientists could trace the progress of the disease in blacks. I think I mentioned this in the last video. Oh yeah, I did mention this in the last video. I can skip the next page. Let's see. Okay. Oh, right here. This is where I need to start on page 38. I'm sorry. So this is under insidious immunities. It says polygenism, the belief that separately evolved species also held persons of one race that could not survive the climate designed for another. Whites who tried to live and work in West Africa, a climate putatively designed for blacks, died in droves, ensuring that the subsequent, I think it's how it's pronounced, white man's grave when the 19th century death rate for British soldiers ranged from 483 and 668 per 1,000 soldiers in Africa, compared to the general annual death of 15 per 1,000 Africans. Historians Warwick Anderson describes how the U.S. military sought to exploit the natural affinity of black Americans in the tropics. So basically, they would send black folks to the warm areas to do various missions or various assignments. It says, in 1900, Nathaniel Southgate Shaler, the dean of Harvard's Lawrence Scientific Schools, proposed that the troops which are required for federal service in tropical lands might be well recruited from the N-words. Shaler was convinced that such children of the tropics would make excellent soldiers, at least in infantrymen, because the African American Constitution was pre-adapted to the tropical disease environment. But the Philippines, Shaler's distinguished advice, was already redundant. During the previous 2 years, the United States had been using African Americans and Filipino scouts to suppress the resistance to its occupation of the archipelago. How I pronounce that? Of the region. Sorry, there's certain words I just can't pronounce. I think it's archipelago. So it says the Southern land-downing class, including physicians, paid attention because they were equated disease with sinister climate and were confronted with an oppressively hot and humid malarious environment that they believed to be teeming with yellow fever, smallpox, other diseases. They were also faced with fertile lands that required backbreaking labor with the attendant risk of heat, prostration, sunstroke, parasitic infection, an immune population specifically designed by the Creator to work long, hard, and for free, as submissive knee-benders, was the perfect answer to their dilemma. So this basically goes to say that they viewed blacks as if we're just designed to be in those areas and to work those long, hard hours, like we're not human. Like we are, how America's always treated us like property, pretty much. But to fully justify enslavement, scientists such as Knott had returned from their naturalist texts to their Bibles, from which they deduced that blacks were the children of Ham, son of Noah, who along with his progeny was marked and condemned to be a servant to his brothers for having viewed his father's nakedness. I feel like that's basically saying that we're cursed. That all these things happen to us because we have a curse upon us. That's what, to me, the way I drew the explanation out. Because by saying we're marked and stuff like that. Let's see. Not even ventured into the twisted ethological high road when he insisted that yellow fever and malaria were visited upon whites as divine punishment for not enslaving blacks. He insisted that non-slaveholding whites contracted these diseases as a result of usurping the natural black role as laborers in the fields. Pragmatic planters and politicians ignored the religious moralizing, but embraced the useful fact that black slaves were only logical medical choice for back-breaking labor in the sunny fields. See, planters' own records bear best evidence that blacks' immunity to heat prostration was merely a convenient myth. One Virginia owner observed in 1825, this is his quote, hottest day ever, men gave out and some fainted, end quote. So basically, what it's saying is these planters thought that we were just built to be in the hot sun and to do all these things, which in reality is not true. In reality, it's not true. And it even comes in here too, saying that blacks were supposed to be immune to malaria, and such immunity is complex but was poorly misunderstood before 1900. But if you notice something throughout the common history, they're always saying that black folks are strong, they can take anything, and all those things. This is why certain things I don't go into, because when you start really reading history and realizing that when people start saying that we're just naturally immune to something, that spells horrible things and destruction for us. Because even there was another incident, back in the 1850s, I think it was, there was a yellow fever breakout in Philly, and a doctor said that black folks are immune to it, and unfortunately the ancestors fell for that. And while everyone else was leaving, a whole bunch of black folks stayed and died from yellow fever. So I think that we need to be cautious about when we say that we're immune to something. And even if we are, we shouldn't really advertise it out. Because even today, there's like what, 65,000 black women missing in America. Where do y'all go? You gotta deal with organ trafficking, sex trafficking, all these different things. We may be strong, but we gotta really know our history and realize that, you know what, us saying that we're so strong we can take anything is not always a good thing. Because sometimes saying that, you know what, hey, we're people too, things hurt. So it also says on page 41, it says, scientists also claim that the primitive nervous system of blacks were immune to physical and emotional pain and to mental illness. See, that goes back to that immunity. You know, we're just, I don't understand this, because if you're immune to all those things, you can't be human. Because to me, it's like pain is a part of being human. You know, that's like saying that you can beat somebody, you can whoop them, you can beat them, do all kinds of physical things to them, and they don't feel it. And on the emotional thing, that's saying that, hey, we can lynch you, we can kill you, we can do all these different things, sell your kids, rape you, all those things, and you don't feel it. And also the mental thing is, they don't think that none of that has a mental effect on us, which isn't true. Which honestly, I think that, I forgot what the word is. Maybe it's cognitive dissonance or something like that. But I think maybe that's something that they told themselves to make them feel better for what they were doing. Because I have to believe that a few of them realized that it was wrong, but they told themselves that to make themselves feel better. That's what I think. It also says on the next paragraph on page 42, owners reap the profits from many patents on slave and inventions, and physicians use slaves as skilled apprentices who often went to practice independently. White households depended on the specialized skills and discernment of slaves, not the other way around. So this reinforces the history that we know that many of our inventions were stolen from us because we couldn't patent it. This is why I say it's important for you to know your history. And I'm not saying you gotta know everything, but it's important to realize that you gotta know your history, and you got to know at least some of it, to a point where you can say that, you know, black folks are really awesome people and invented a bunch of things. And by you saying that we invented something doesn't mean you're taking it from other groups of people. No, you're just giving credit to where credit is due. Because for me, if I go out there and I look in the history books and I say that, okay, you know what, knowledge is knowledge. So if I go out and know that, hey, a white guy invented this, that's cool. Props to him, right? But we should know that, hey, black folks invented mathematics, R&B, hip hop, reggae, Afrobeat, the stoplight, the refrigerated truck, even the refrigerator. I believe also, I don't think the light bulb was one of them, but many other inventions. There's even a black-owned car company before Ford. I think it's called, what was it? R.J. Patterson, Richard and Patterson Company, or might have been C&J Richard and Patterson Company. You can look it up. Actually, let me look it up. Let me look it up right here. This is CJ. No. Basically, I don't see it, but it was an old company that I was called, and back in the late 1800s, it was an older company. And let's see. Okay, page 43. In Washington's slave pen, Gardner witnessed the physician in his role of pronouncing a slave to be sound, which is saying that they're healthy, they can work in the fields. Yet he confused the physician's certification to the slave's soundness with the concern of her health. Soundness did not speak to the welfare or happiness, but rather to the ability to extract work, the likelihood of fetching a good price in the market, and her breeding ability. Exactly. So her sound doesn't mean that she was actually okay. It means that she can go out and work and have kids and be sold. That's what that means. Many common medical problems, from mental illness to chronic malaria and parasitic infection, were capable with the demands of an enslaved laborer's work. In fact, many ailments emanated from those workloads. Profit drove the medical treatment of slaves from their very first encounter with Western medicine. Kidnapped Africans, and this is the part that really sickened me, because basically what it said was, kidnapped Africans en route to America were cursorily examined by ship's surgeons in an attempt to cut losses by immediately jettisoning those with such stigma as winter bottom sign of swelling of the lymph nodes found in those who harbored sicknesses. That's just sad. So you on your ship and you capture this person as a slave. To save your dollar, you're gonna throw them overboard because you think they're gonna be sick. That's how sick these people are. That's just sick. Let's see, where else did I leave out? They and others would not survive the horrific Atlantic journey, were unceremoniously thrown overboard. So this was a part of the, what they call it, the Midwest Passage, I think it's called, or I forgot what basically it was part of the slave trade, the journey over. I forgot what it was called, but basically it was one of the hardest parts of the whole thing. Because slavery started when you were on the continent, and then they shipped you over here. I think it was called the Midwest Passage. The Middle Passage, I'm sorry. So that was a horrible thing. And then down here it says, with the soundness rather than the welfare of the slave in mind. For example, slaves were not immunized against smallpox as whites were, because this might leave marks on their bodies that could, page 42, discourage buyers. Sorry, page 44. Thomas Jefferson declared, quote, I consider a slave woman who breeds once every 2 years as profitable as the best worker on the farm, end quote. Every year from 1770 until emancipation, 1 of every 5 black women of childbearing age between 15 and 44, gave birth. That's a lot of rape. That's a lot of that. That's a lot of it. That's a lot of forcing people to having kids. Some of that had to be rape. That's just nasty. Girls were forced or enticed into sexual relationships at an unhealthy early age by owners who cited the girls' supposedly hot-blooded African nature. Sexually transmitted diseases thrived on the plantation, notably syphilis, against which the immunology of native Africans had little protection. Enslaved women's vulnerability began on the Sea Passage from Africa. As recorded in 1788, memoirs of English ship surgeon Alexander Falconbridge, quote, on board some ships, the common sailors were allowed to have intercourse with such of the black women, those consent they can procure. Yeah, really, as if they got consent. The officers are permitted to indulge in their passions among them at pleasure, and sometimes are guilty of such exercises as disgrace human nature. In parentheses. A lot of these girls were raped. If you look at the history of it, a lot of them were raped. A lot of them got pregnant and had abortions and died because of it, because they didn't want to bring a child into this world like that. It says, let's see. Basically, in this next part, it says that how black people are just wildly sexual and are like animals that can't control ourselves. It says, black women's sexual availability, not to their powerlessness, but a key tenet of scientific racism. Blacks were unable to control their powerful sexual drives, which were frequently compared to those of rotting animals. This lack of self-control made black men dangerous and made black women sexually aggressive Jezebels, who habitually enticed white men into inappropriate sexual relations. Dr. Lewis, the famous Howard ethnologist, explained, as soon as the sexual desires are awakening in the young men of the South, they find it easy to gratify themselves by the readiness with which they are met by colored, mixed-race house servants. This blunts his better instinct in the direction and leads him to gradually seek more spicy partners, as I have heard the full blacks called by fast young men. And that's not a quote, sorry. This is page 45, wrong. The last part I just read. But slave narratives bemoan the rape and sexual abuse that threatened black women at every turn. Mary Reynolds, who was born on the plantation of Dr. Kilpatrick in the Black River, Louisiana, reflected us in words, know the doctor, this is in quotes by the way, took a black woman quick as he did a white, and took any on his place he wanted, and he took them often, end quote. As the personal property of the master, black women had no social or legal protections. They could not legally be raped. So, even consensual relationships had to be viewed through the lens of enslavement. In her memoirs, former slave Harriet Jacobs sadly mused that eventually she acquiesced to such sexual demands because it was less humiliating to give in than to be forced. Once pregnant, women typically were kept at hard labor until their 5th month and recalcitrant. Basically, they were kept at hard labor to the 5th month, and other pregnant women were made to lie in trenches that accommodated their bellies so that they could be beaten without warning the unborn child. That's just sick. You beat a pregnant woman. That's just sick. Slaves were strong, young, and slaves who were strong, young, and valuable received quality health care that was denied to the feeble as well as to the aged, who were often cast off the plantation or sold to physicians when the expense of their care exceeded their market value. Martha Griffith Brown recalled the words in which an abusive slave master refused to pay a doctor to treat an elderly slave who had spent her life working on his plantation. quote, this is what the slave master said: I ain't going to spend, I'm going to just put my own words in there because they use some older language. I ain't going to spend money on that old N-word unless you can cure her and make her able to work and pay for the money that's been laid out for her. If she ain't going to die, why let her do it in the cheapest way? Period. End quote. That's just it. Just because. So basically, if they mean something to you, they're young, they're valuable, you'll treat them well medically. But when they get up in the age, just let them go, let them die. That's just it. It said, and then it says, under the owner-physician pact, these physicians derive most of their income from caring for slaves, as Samuel Cartwright discovered in 1853. The most profitable kind of practice was among the N-words, end quote. So these physicians made a whole lot of money off of caring for black people. In page 47, this is the last page I did. Yeah, this will be it. In 1858, 75% of the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company policies were written on slaves. But despite the slave owners' assurances that the slaves were like members of the family, insurers research suggested that the slave owners did not shy from maximizing the profit from their slaves, dead or alive. So what I'm assuming they would do is probably make an insurance claim even though the slave was alive. So this is it, page 37 to 47. So this was like, almost half an hour. Wow. Usually don't take this long. But I want you guys to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Actually, you know what I'm going to think about doing is posting it another time. Because what I noticed at my last video, I think I posted a little bit earlier. And I got comments and likes and watches. So what I might do is just repost videos often and see to make some changes on it. Because I noticed that maybe if I post a little earlier versus at nighttime, I might get people to watch the video and things like that. So I'm going to try things out, and if you guys are watching it earlier, then I'll try to post it earlier, or post it at night and then just do it again in the morning or something like that. So we'll see. You guys have a good one. Stay safe, stay healthy, avoid coronavirus. If you are protesting, stay safe. I don't want you to go to jail for nothing stupid. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, just be smart, y'all. Alright? Just please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get all the posts, notifications, and all that good stuff. And you have a good one.